You started out training dogs back in the 50s and the 60s, and you were primarily using pain-based approaches. And then you became a practitioner of yoga and you had a change of consciousness.
It's exactly how it happened. And thanks for reading the book. My brother called me and he got a new dog and his dog was barking. And I had stepped away for a little while because I was good fortune to be able to take some trips over to India. I got out of the training game for a little bit. And so my brother, when I got back, my brother had this dog that was barking. The first thing I did was put a choke chain on the dog because I've been doing that for 14 years. And as I write in the book, boy, I just jerked that dog one time and I just threw the leash on the ground. I said, what the heck am I doing? So obviously there's something behind the scenes was working. This is no way to treat a family member and a friend. So my consciousness had changed. And so since then, that was 1988. Yeah, so that's exactly what happened. And then I went back to school, so to speak, and there weren't a lot of people that were teaching positive training. Of course, the great Karen Pryor, who just passed away, legend in her time, that's for sure. And so I went on the internet and was searching all around for positive trainers because I was new to it. And I found Terry Ryan, and she was so gracious. She spent 40, 45 minutes on the phone with me. She was completely open. I was explaining what I was doing, switching over to positive training. And when I got off the phone, she answered all my questions. When I got off the phone, I said, I've met a lot of people in the dog training world that are really competitive and don't like to share. And I said, if this is what positive training is all about, I'm on it. You decide the kind of person you want to be. And no matter what you do, whether you're a dog trainer or not, everything you do is a reflection of the person you want to be. And I said, boy, she really is a great reflection of what positive training is all about. Very gracious, very kind. I went to two of her 5-day chicken training camps. You want to learn about dog training? Go to a chicken training camp and go to Wolf Park.
That's what they
And
say.
you'll learn a lot about training animals. And so since then, it took me 3 years, and I read about this in one of my books too. It took me 3 years to get all of the muscle memory out of this arm from jerking dogs for 14 years. It isn't easy. So then I put my shingle out as a positive trainer, and there was no looking back, and never did any of that garbage again.
Nice. That's great to hear. A couple of things come to mind during that. One, you're absolutely right about muscle memory. And I think that dog guardians who hire dog trainers, a lot of times that's the thing that's holding them back. They've been training their dog a certain way for X number of years. And then here we come and we're like, well, you got to change. And I always remind my clients that focus on yourself and the environment. Don't worry about the dog too much, right? Focus on your behavior and the environment, and then you'll get better results.
You great. It's a great point. If people, when I was doing a seminar on dog memory, and I went back on the internet, this was several years ago, to find out what the latest on memory and how it affects dog behavior and our behavior. And I heard this woman say, she was some PhD that was giving classes, and she said, you never forget that up to 95% of learning is unconscious. And I go, time out. And I replayed it and replayed it. And then I started looking it up. And I wish we would have learned this back when we were in grade school, is that the conscious part is when you're working with the dog, what you just said, you're creating an environment where the dog is motivated to learn. And what's happening behind the scenes is that Mother Nature, that's our subconscious, the dog's subconscious, is replaying and rehearsing everything we learned during the day and making those neural connections even while we sleep. And one of the examples that I give to people is if you're learning to speak a new language, if you're learning to play an instrument, all of a sudden, as if by magic, somebody will say to you, hola, and something you've never done before. Hola, me llamo Pablo. ¿Cómo está usted? And you're so surprised that you were able to do it. Or you've got a guitar, the piano, and all of a sudden you do something that's just mind-blowing. And you say, wow, what a great musician I'm turning out to be. But the thought should be, I wonder how the heck that happened. And the way it happens is what you were just saying, is create an environment and get out of the way of Mother Nature and let her do her let her do her thing.
Yeah, I mean, the science of the subconscious is a really big deal. And, the farther we go along in history, the more that seems to be what everybody's general consensus is it's what's going on underneath, not so much the surface.
Yeah, and I'm convinced, there's been such an evolution in science in my 50 years. Another 50 years, they're going to have little cameras on the dogs or little TV screens on the dog's collar, and you're going to be able to see the neurons connecting because they actually have videotape of neurons saying hello to each other. Hey, we're working on a sit. No, you go want to go over the John over there.
Yeah, but though, you bring up an interesting point. You're gonna have to counter condition that dog to wear that thing on its collar, right?
But you bring up a really good point when somebody once asked me, well, what do you think the biggest change has been over the 50 years? And I said, well, and I ask you that question. What do you think the greatest changes have been in the positive way in the last 50 years in dog training? And then I'll give you my answer. What do you think?
Well, I have only been a professional dog trainer for 25 years. I would say in the last 25 years, the biggest change has been the ability to obtain information free. So going back to what you were saying about Terry Ryan, and that's the thing that blows me away about people who are still stuck on using really harsh aversives.
Yeah.
No, it's like you have so much documented science that fear and pain is going to impede learning. I put up a short from an interview I did with Dr. Karen Overall while she was discussing how if there's too much cortisol, it's really hard to make memory because you're stressed. And all you're going to remember is, I got to survive, I got to survive. And, I think the biggest change is, the internet, social media. And I mean, I'm a filming fanatic. I literally film every dog walk, every class, every client, and I have it all cataloged. I'm actually on hard drive 120. And it mystifies me why more dog trainers don't film, even for their own edification. And especially in today's day and age, we have such a litigious society. That's one of the reasons why I started filming everything, because I don't ever want anybody to come back and say, oh, well, you did this or you said this. And in the few instances where that's occurred, I just said, well, okay, whereabouts do you think it happened? Because it's all on film, and it completely ends everything. Once they remember, oh yeah, that guy Drayton had me on film, then they're like, oh yeah, I don't really have a complaint. So I would say that just the exchange of information, technology in the way of being able to film, because Bob Bailey said in a seminar I saw him speak at, he said, if you're not filming your training, you're kind of a fraud because you can't remember everything, going back to memory. And he said, just set up a tripod, get you, the dog, the environment. Don't worry about it. Just train, but to get it on film. And that's one of the main reasons why after that seminar, I was like, okay, I'm filming everything. Because I'm obsessed with being better.
Yeah, well, you're ahead of the game. I think everybody should look into wearing those little lapel cameras, and
I wear my GoPro everywhere. I don't have an exchange with a human being. I go grocery shopping, my GoPro's on. I go to the gas station because I just don't want anybody to ever say, well, you did X, Y, Z.
I love it. I think, who else I've had a conversation with? It's Smear the dog, Victoria Stillwell.
Oh,
so
yeah.
We were having a conversation. We were doing a podcast, and we were comparing notes because she's been around. You the same like you've been around everything, and the great work she's done. There's nobody else that's been on TV. We had a conversation about that. Well, why haven't there been more people that teach positive reinforcement training, reward-based training on TV? And she said she found that it wasn't sexy enough, and was the word she used. That everybody gets locked into, I want the quick fix. Look, my dog is no longer jumping. My dog is no longer barking. And our discussion had, yes, but at what price? It's like a two-sided coin. You've got the science on one side, which is great, but on the other side of the coin, you've got ethical standards. You've got empathy. And the biggest change that I've seen over the 50 years is that back then, the euthanization rate was like almost, and the record keeping it's still pretty poor, but it's a heck of a lot better than what it's been even through the 80s and 90s. But it was 10 million dogs and cats a year being euthanized, and because of the great work of the evolution of people's hearts, they've grown, and empathy has grown, and kindness and compassion. We're down to, it's still way up there, but we're down to, I think, under 2 million dogs. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dogs and cats that have saved. just because on one side the science, yes, but the science is driven and is rooted in kindness and compassion. Of all the garbage and the tough stuff that's been going on in life, that those are the facts and those are the figures. So that's been a joy for me to observe. As I was mentioning, because of the great evolution in empathy that people have had and the number of dogs and cats and other animals that have been saved over the last 50 years, that whole thing about what one person can do makes a big difference. That whole thing about getting cheesy and everything, but you drop a pebble in the water and it ripples out. I'm absolutely convinced, because I look at things in a positive way, that when it's time, it'll happen. But it's just a voice here and a voice there until there's again, cheesy, until there's a chorus, and then everybody's singing the same song. But there has to be a payoff for people who might be listening to this who are just getting into dog training. I said, you got to make it simple and listen to your audience. And that is, if you're talking to somebody, you have to make sure that they can understand what you're saying, but it's relevant for their life. And so to simplify things and to make it relevant, I said there's only two big secrets in dog training, and they're the same two secrets that we human beings have to discover. And that is that dogs and humans are transactional. Whoever has the most value, that's who the dog listens to. And dogs and humans are contextual. So there's no such thing as a stubborn dog. You either don't have enough money or the dog has no idea what you're talking about in that context. And then you give examples about that. And that makes it understandable to people. Keep it really simple. You have to make caring for dogs and empathy and kindness and compassion rewardable. And so I bring into just once or twice during a meeting and said, well, how does that feel? And people can relate to that. My dog just sat. My dog just went to his or her bed. And when on my video, on my website, you'll see me demonstrating a very simple leave it with my hand. Without exaggeration, 75% of the people who see their dog do that just go back and their mouth opens. I had no idea my dog was so smart. I said, yes, and you have the cutest dog in the world too.